Welcome. Today we need to look at the 19th century, and we need to look at it from this concept of the Age of Revolutions, which is how it is often referred. There are generally considered to be two ideologies, two main isms in the 19th century, and that is liberalism and nationalism. Although there are several others, these two seem to dominate. Now, we'll deal with nationalism in another lecture. But today, I want to deal with liberalism and the Age of Revolutions. That is part of it. To do that, we can't deal with all of Europe, so we're going to use France as a case study, which means we're going to look at the Revolution of 1830, the Revolution of 1848, and the Revolution of 1871, although please understand there's a lot more going on throughout Europe than just that. First and foremost, we need to define liberalism. Now, most people think of the term liberal as tree-hugging bunny lovers, right? People who won't let anybody suffer or anybody die. But that is the modern negative incarnation of liberal. Just as the modern incarnation of conservative is not accurate, liberal, small l liberal, meaning not a party, in the 19th century meant two things. Small government, where the government does not get involved and essentially lets people do what they want, think free market economy, and representative government, right? So you're talking about a representative government, hence a republic or a constitutional monarchy, and a small government, a government that lets people act freely, and those who want to get ahead and have the ability to get ahead can, but it's got nothing to do with your birth. Please understand, these are both coming out of the concept of the natural rights of man in the French Revolution and in the Enlightenment. And please do not miss Adam Smith's influence in here as well. All right. Well, what was happening in the 19th century is these ideas spread. They spread beyond just France. They spread beyond just the individuals of the Enlightenment. And what's interesting is how these ideas spread after the French Revolution had a lot to do with this. It had a lot to do with the fact that France, under Napoleon, took over the majority of Europe. And in taking over, soldiers spread throughout Europe. And these are soldiers who were able to rise through the ranks not because of who they were born to, but because of merit. And these soldiers started talking about this and the basic concepts, not the high-minded intellectual Enlightenment concepts, but the concepts of what France was doing on a practical level in the early Republic age. And so these ideas spread down through Spain and Brussels and out through what we now call Germany and Austria, and even to slightly Russia, although it was tamped down there. So these ideas are spreading, and revolutions, these liberal revolutions, these what some people have called representative revolutions, they're spreading very quickly. Okay. So let's move to our first example. Because when we left off, we had talked about how Napoleon had been taken out of office. And when Napoleon was removed by external forces, they put a king back on the throne of France. Well, as you can imagine, that king towed the line, right? He was Louis the 18th, and he towed the line. But his son, Charles X, was not so wise. He did not try to consolidate more power to himself, but he was opposed to the extension of voting rights to more people. And you have to remember, this is in the early industrial age, where you have this rising affluent middle class. And so, as had happened so many times before, in 1830 people rose up. There was a revolution. This is, by the way, for those of you who follow Les Mis, this is the revolution that is talked about in there, or one of. And people rose up, demanding more rights. They overthrew the king. No, they did not kill him this time. And the person they put in charge was this guy. His name is Louis Philippe. Now, he's still a king. He's still royal bloodline. But he is from a junior Bourbon line. If you remember, Bourbon is the royal family of France. But he dates his bloodline back to Louis the 13th. And that's important because he is not directly descended from Louis the 14th, the Sun King, the absolute monarch. So the idea is, let's take an individual of the royal family which predates that total absolutism. All right. And the interesting thing about him is this is how he usually is dressed. Now, I'm sure this is a very nice silk outfit, a silk vest. But if you look at him, he looks a lot like a businessman. He doesn't look like some king covered in robes. He doesn't look like those images of Louis the 14th. He looks like a more normal person. They called him the bourgeois king. Bourgeois being this term for middle class, or really upper middle class. He was royalty, but he didn't necessarily dress like it. Well, needless to say, what happens here is Louis Philippe comes to power, but at some point, he forgets how he got there. Now, he, more than any other king, does not crack down. He doesn't try to assert his power. He takes his role as a limited constitutional monarch. But you have to understand, things are changing. More and more people are rising. The working class is getting more rights. They're getting more autonomy. This middle class is rising, going from what was maybe 2% of the population up to, by the mid-century, somewhere around 30% of the population. And more of these people and these artisans and kind of the upper lower class are demanding more and more rights. And he does not move with this time. So what happens in 1848, another revolution breaks out. A revolution of what you would think of as kind of the middling class. These lower class people. They're not the common workers, but people who still kind of work with their hands, but have some kind of skilled labor. These guys are rising up. And they overthrow Louis Philippe. Now, what's fascinating is this starts a chain reaction. 1848, the age of revolutions. Look it up. There are revolutions in almost every country in Europe. Austria itself has something like 10 to limited success. This is the game-changing moment where all of a sudden revolutions are happening everywhere. People are demanding more representation. People are demanding not having absolute monarchs. And this is where we see things really change. Because whether the revolutions are successful or not, kings and advisors see the writings on the wall. And for the most part, Russia excluded, we see changes happening. But let's stick with France for a second. Because what we have is now they get rid of a king entirely. They get rid of a king, and what do you do without a king? That was the big question. They decide to hold national elections for their new executive. And the man who wins, is this guy. His name is Louis Napoleon. Yes, his name's on purpose. He is the nephew of Napoleon, right? Napoleon Bonaparte. And he is not a politician. He is not a noble. He wins by name recognition, right? He is the nephew of Napoleon. They love Napoleon. Remember, they did not remove him from office. He won because he's Napoleon. 1851, just 2 years after he gets elected, he declares himself emperor. I kid you not. He actually does this. Emperor Napoleon III. That's how he declares himself. He's got some imperial goals. He's somewhat bourgeois. He believes in these liberal, semi-democratic kind of ideas. So he's popular with everybody because he builds on that concept of France greatness that Napoleon did, that his Napoleon Bonaparte did, but he still is seen as this man of the age, this liberal emperor. I know that doesn't make sense, but you have to kind of follow what's happening and what has followed in France. Now the thing is, how could this man go wrong? Right? He has the conservative, he has the liberal side all on his side. The only thing that could go wrong is if he lost the support of the people, the common man, because the common man's starting to get a voice. And he does that. In 1871, he lost the Franco-Prussian War. And in losing the Franco-Prussian War, he didn't lose support of the nobles, what was left of them. He didn't lose support of the bourgeois wealthy. He lost support of the common people, because the common people saw the leader of France as no longer strong. And they took this as an opportunity to rise up in this event we call the Paris Commune. And this was a true revolution of equality. They flew this red flag of equality. It was the common workers saying that we deserve the right to vote. We deserve equal rights as well. Everybody else has gotten it. We too deserve it. And they will be a symbol. They will become a symbol of revolution, of what we will soon call socialist and communist revolutions. The reason why the Russian flag is red, why the Chinese flag is red, why the Cuban flag is red, is based on the fact that these people flew this red flag in the Paris Commune. They will become the martyrs. But to become a martyr, you have to die. They lay siege to Paris. They hold Paris for 73 days. Napoleon III, realizing he can't invade this massive group of people, surrounds the city and lays siege to the city for 73 days in an attempt to simply starve them out. They will eat rats. They will eat the zoo animals. They will eat the elephant that had been bought with the pennies collected by school children. And when Napoleon finally rushed the city at the end of this, he will line up 26,000 people along the outer walls of the city and have them executed. 26,000. This will be the last of the great liberal revolutions. It will be a mark that says that maybe we do need to extend rights to everybody because they are fighting for it. But it will also be a moment to the people, to the various working classes of Europe, saying that unless we force their hand, we will not get rights. We will never have a say unless we demand it. This will be what the workers learn from this. And this will lead to some communist revolutions that we will look at shortly enough. Ta-ta for now.